5 ways you are setting up your kids for failure. Doing everything for them, fixing all their problems. That negative effect is that kids naturally push boundaries, question everyone except what your child did. The outcome, they're going to be pretty crappy people. Hey, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Falling for Learning podcast. Please hit the subscribe button. We're here for you, and you want to stick with this channel if you have teens and tweens, or you're a caregiver, right? You might be a parent, you might be a caregiver, and you want to know what to do to keep them on track for learning and to stay on track for success. Hit the subscribe button. You are setting up your kids for failure. This podcast episode is going to feature 5 ways that parents are setting their children up for failure. This podcast episode is going to focus on ways that we are unfortunately setting up our teens and tweens for failure. Number 1, the number 1 way that we're setting up our kids for failure is we are not giving them consequences. Now, we know back in the day, there were consequences for everything. We're getting our butts whipped. Some people tell the story about, and I didn't grow up this way, but how the neighbor might, give you a spanking or a whipping or whatever you want to call it. Your parents give you one, your daddy, your mom, whatever. So I'm not encouraging that or suggesting that, but consequences just could be natural. And a lot of us are on the side where we're not even giving our kids any consequences when they do something wrong. And this is so problematic in so many different ways. That negative effect is that kids naturally push boundaries. So if they're not getting in trouble for little things, right, then eventually it'll be out of our hands and they'll be getting punished, right? Where it might have been something, like a little small thing, then they might, instead of they'll be doing a crime. They will be committing, instead of a misdemeanor, a felony. Like, I'm getting hyperbolic a little bit, but at the same time, I'm not. Like, literally, kids will push the boundaries until they can't anymore. And think about ourselves. Like, would we be getting up and going to work every day if we could get paid anyway and we could get everything that we wanted? No, probably not. We have to be accountable for what we do and how we do it. And that is how we grow and we become responsible. And we're really not giving our children the chance to be responsible people when they don't have consequences for what they do. And those consequences also help them to sit and reflect about what they did and to give them an opportunity to do better next time. It is noteworthy that schools have even shifted away from consequences. Now, when I first became an educator, teachers told me that the pendulum swings in education, meaning that we might be at one extreme and one era of education in my career, and we'll switch to a whole different opposite, right? An opposite effect. And that's where we are with consequences. Probably around 2008 or so, kids were getting expelled from school for bringing a toy gun. So they were out of the district. Major problems, right? That creates so many issues. If they talk back to the teacher, they're getting suspended. So it was very much on the opposite side. Here we've swung all the way to where there's really not consequences. Now, part of that push was to have restorative justice. So kids, which a lot of Black kids, kids of color, were getting suspended and expelled, even becoming part of the justice system early because of minor infractions in school. Now, it's minor, but maybe they did it 10 times. They were talking back to the teacher 10 times. And so then now they're part of, they have to go to court and whatever. They're expelled. they're kicked out of this particular school. So, really major consequences for small things that kids were doing. And we're now to the point where we wanted to, again, a lot of people, and I think it's wonderful that they've eliminated some of those really draconian type of consequences. But the issue is some people have gone the other extreme where there's no consequences for whatever a kid does, which again, we are creating more and more problems because the kids are getting into more serious trouble because we're basically ignoring every little thing that they do. When we could nip some of this behavior or these negative habits in the bud by giving little natural consequences to the issues, right? Not criminalizing our kids, not making them a villain, like this is just who you are as a person, but addressing that behavior and helping the kid to grow, learn, and reflect. But again, that was about school. Just so you'll know that if your kid is going to a school, then they may be bringing some of those habits home that were not corrected at school. And so even more of an onus is on parents to make sure that they take care of these issues and give their kids consequences and make sure that they're growing and reflecting on what they're doing, their habits and their behaviors. So natural consequences could be as simple as you are not going to have your report at school today, right? So instead of me going back home, derailing my day, giving the report that the child left at home, giving it to them, their natural consequences is they will have to turn that report in late. Maybe their teacher won't accept it late. Whatever that is, they are going to face the consequence. And we might feel uncomfortable with this sometimes because we want to really be loving parents and supportive parents. I'm all for that. We want to be loving. We want to be supportive. But what we don't want to do is get ourselves into the habit of fixing all their problems so that they don't have any consequences. And then even thinking about how you're handling other people who give them consequences. There is a lot of information out there, and I've seen it firsthand, where people want to blame the teacher for everything that their child does. Well, I know he hit somebody else, but what were the other kids doing? What was the teacher doing when he hit someone? So it's really, you're going to question everyone except what your child did. And I know I love my kid too, and I've been accused more than once of standing up for my kid when I should have just really been making sure they're facing consequences. And I reflected and I've worked on that. And I am, just trying to be honest with you. You have to do that too, because the outcome, if we do not give our kids consequences and we're always vilifying whoever's trying to give them consequences as well, is that we're going to have kids that are going to be, they're going to lack a lot of character and personality traits that are admirable. So that's all that to say is they're going to be pretty crappy people, unfortunately, unless they're just intrinsically a good, they'll do what they're supposed to do. They're going to be pretty crappy people because they're not going to be accountable, and they never were accountable, and they won't care. So it's a big issue, and relationships are going to be a problem for them because they're not going to be a reliable person because they don't care, right? There's nothing to have made them care. And we don't want that from our kids. We love our kids, and these are little things that we could do to help them. So they just won't get certain things, right? They may not be able to go to their friend's house if they're not doing what they said they were going to do. They said they were going to clean their room. Their room's not clean. They said they're going to clean it by Friday. You're supposed to go to their friend's house on Friday after school. You're not going. Your room's not clean. Now, sometimes your child's punishment is also your punishment, because let's be honest. Sometimes that Friday night when they're going to go to their friend's house was you going to go to a happy hour or something like that with your girlfriends, with your pals, your friends, right? That was your hangout time. Maybe you just need to relax and decompress from the week, and you're just going to watch TV and just be chilling. and not worried about, feeding the kids or whatever you need to do as a parent, right? You're going to be off. And that is what it is. I've been punished many times by my own punishments against, for my daughter. And that's what it is. That is part of our sacrifice as parents. But we don't want to get to the point where the punishments are out of our hands and it's in the police's hands. It's in a court, in a jury's hands, because over the time they've missed 1,000 punishments because we just couldn't bring ourselves to, actually parent, right? We can't do that to ourselves, and we can't do it to our kids. So yes, you didn't get that night out that you were supposed to have because your kid was supposed to have, but your kid didn't do what they're supposed to do. It's okay. You will have days that you could look back and you could sit back and feel the rewards of that time when you doubled down and made sure your child had a consequence for their behavior, because later on you will reap rewards. Just like I said, if you don't do it, you don't give them consequences and they're pretty crappy people who are doing things that are ridiculous and are irresponsible, you will have the opposite effect. If you will have these great people, these wonderful human beings that you've raised that are responsible, and they are giving you benefits later on. That's what will happen. I know, firsthand knowledge, honey. So it may feel crappy when that night out is canceled because you had to cancel Christmas on your baby. But guess what? It's going to pay off. It's going to pay off. All right. I'm sorry. Anyway, the second thing that we're doing to set our kids up for failure is we're doing everything for them, right? They don't have to remember to charge their iPad, charge their phone, to get, when they go into the shower, they don't remember to bring a towel. You make sure you get a towel for them. You set out their clothes. You're doing everything for your sweet little baby. And yes, they're sweet little babies, but guess what? Our job is to work ourselves out of a job. That means that we are not needed, right? And I always follow this up with saying we still want to keep our relationship with our kids, but we should be they shouldn't need us anymore, right? Your parent doesn't have to wake you up. I hope not. Do your parents have to wake you up to go to work or, to go to your appointments or whatever? Or do we handling that ourselves, moms and dads out there? So yeah, that's what we want our kids to do. Be independent. So we can't do everything for them. And we have to have these conversations with them. You are in 4th grade now. You are going to make your own lunch for school. You are in this grade now. You are this old now. Now I'm expecting you to keep your room clean. So every Wednesday, your room needs to be clean. I will do a room check every Wednesday and it's supposed to be cleaned. Whatever it is, set those benchmarks for your kids so that they are becoming more and more independent. I am not any longer reminding you to brush your teeth, but by 8 o'clock at night, I know that I need to know that you have brushed your teeth. Whatever it is, you are working yourself out of a job, and think about those benchmarks for your child that they need to be doing. And you could reflect on some of the things you did independently as a child as you were growing up, or maybe not, because some of us were given too much responsibility as youngsters, and we were our siblings' mamas and daddies, surrogate mom and dads or whatever. So you don't want to give them too much responsibility, but think about what that balance might be. All over the United States, 75% of children don't know how to write well. Add that to the fact that so many people out there are trying to silence the voices of those who have been oppressed and trying to prevent them from telling their story. Who's going to tell your story? If your child doesn't know how to write well, I have 2 books to address this issue, The Rewrite Method and The Rewrite Method Workbook, written to make sure that parents know what to do, that educators know what to do to get their children to write better, and just not write better, but love to write. Make sure that your next generation could tell their story and they won't be silenced. Go to fallingforlearning.com today to purchase your set. Join us for Well Educated Wednesdays every Wednesday on Instagram Live at Falling for Learning. It is a free parent question and answer session where parents can ask questions, learn about resources, strategies, and tips to make sure their children are on track for learning and stay on track for success. That's every Wednesday on Instagram Live at Falling for Learning. We look forward to seeing you and helping the next generation thrive. And, we will have our blog with some, resources for you to look up to see, like, what are some good benchmarks at certain ages for your kids, and setting those benchmarks, those goalposts for your kids to become more and more independent is essential to their development, right? We're working ourselves out of a job. We are not doing everything for them. And a lot of us do. I charge your iPad, I set your clothes out, I washed your clothes, and they're leaving the house and they have not done anything. They're like a queen or a princess or whatever. You've got their coat, their hat, their gloves, you got all the little essentials. You've organized their stuff, made their lunch, just place it in their hand, they're walking out the door. And later on, that is going to be such a problem because they're supposed to be college and career ready. Does someone have to tell them everything they're supposed to do? Are we preparing our kids to be the boss or be bossed around? Just sit with that. Are we preparing them to be the boss or to be bossed around? Right? Independence is important. The third thing that we're doing that is setting our kids up for failure is we're lying to them. We need to tell our kids the truth. Life isn't fair and things don't always work out the way we want them to. Definitely not the first time. And so having those conversations with our kids is going to help them become resilient, wise, right? Savvy to what's going on. Because otherwise we're just setting them up for disappointment when we could let them know and they get those little taste of disappointment rather than this huge disappointment because we've lied to them about different things. Some of our children have aspirations. They want to be an NBA player. They want to be a football player, but they won't go to football practice on a regular basis. They don't give their 100% for football, or, they are wanting to be a doctor or whatever, but they're not studying. There's different things that they need to do to prepare for the future that they want. And if they're not doing that, we need to be truthful and honest with them about that. Some things are just physical. I'm not quite 5'1", and it wasn't impossible if I wanted to be a basketball player. I wasn't into basketball, by the way, but it wasn't impossible. But just being honest, if that's what your child is, like, there are some challenges for you physically to do certain things. So you don't want to say it's impossible, but you want to tell them that it's going to be hard. And that means you got to work extra hard to get it done. And if they're not willing to put in the work, they need to know that they are not on the right path. You don't want to set them up for failure and just tell them everything is wonderful and everything is great. And if you are, going back to number 2, where you're not doing everything for them, you're setting them up to do more things themselves. Maybe you have them, you pay them to wash your car or something like that. But let's say they, half-assed it. It's not a very good job. That's your kid. You want to still pay them the $15, $20, whatever you said, but you want to be honest with them. If you want to, and they're saying they're an entrepreneur, they're going to start this job, you want to tell them this is not up to par. And let me show you the places where this is still dusty here. You didn't clean the windows, whatever. So point those things out to them. You don't want to tell them everything is trash. You could tell them some positives that they did, but you also want to be truthful about, you're not really going to be able to compete if this is how you do things. If you're going to do it better, you're going to make a better choice next time. You're going to be more, pay attention to detail. Otherwise, I can't continue to pay you because I want my car a certain way and you're not doing that. So be honest with them about what's going on. That also goes to your limitations. If you are not going to be able to buy them a BMW and they are asking for a BMW, let them know, like, I can't afford that. Don't be disappointed when it comes in Christmas because I'm not getting it for you. I don't have it to give you. So be honest with them, because it's worse for them to be all like, have these inflated dreams and everything. And like, oh yeah, I don't, I'm going to get a BMW. That's what I'm going to get. And then you don't have it. And it comes, they're going to be so disappointed. When you could just tell them early on, guess what? We don't have money for that. We're not going to do that. But I could help you come up with a plan for making money, or in the future, or this is a better choice to spend your money on than a BMW, and these are the reasons why. Be honest. This helps your children, again, to be able to face disappointment and to keep moving, right? To be able to understand that they're not special in the way that hard times are going to come to them. They're going to have limitations. That's what they need to know. This is what part of life. And if they don't know that, they're going to have a lot of problems being disappointed. But if they know that failure and disappointment is part of life and they'll be able to get past it and move on and have better times, then that's going to help bolster them for the future. And that's what you want. That will help them preserve relationships. They don't think all relationships are supposed to be perfect. They could accept people being imperfect in their lives, and they could work through some challenges with their friend or with their romantic partners. So it really affects a lot if they are used to not hearing the truth. So our fourth way that we set up our kids for failure is overscheduling and overstructuring their lives. Right? Because I know that we have a lot of goals for our kids may have a lot of goals, but if we are giving them too many tasks and too many responsibilities, they are not going to be able to fulfill it, and we are setting them up for failure. So making a realistic schedule for them, giving them some downtime, right? They should not have to have a very busy schedule every day of the week. So 7 days a week, they have an activity, they have an appointment, they have a practice, they have too much. Being able to have some downtime gives them creativity, gives them some time to have fun, gives their life balance. We need balance. We don't want to be working every day of the week, and neither should our children. So help them to have a childhood. Don't set them up for failure by giving them all these things that they need to be doing. And that also, as they get older, they will also be scheduling themselves for things that aren't possible to fit in the schedule, or where they do everything, half poorly. Everything's done poorly because, there's too much that they have going on. And also, again, this goes back to telling them about limitations. So you can't be a part of soccer, football, and track, figure out one of them that you're going to do, or two of them, or whatever it is. Like having real conversations about what is manageable and what's not manageable, because they are people and humans who want to have fun and who also need downtime and rest to fully function. Okay, so very much an essential part of their development is knowing what is realistic for their schedule and for their time. Number 5, the way to set up our kids for failure is overemphasis on achievement and perfection. Now, as a recovering perfectionist, I do have to say, this is one of the number one ways to knock a kid out into the failure range, right? Because the expectation to be perfect is not attainable. It's not. and making them, nitpicking them about what they didn't do and how they could do it better and how it could be done better is a number one way to make them feel like failures. And it really affects their mental health, right? They're literally going to drive themselves crazy trying to meet your expectations or their unrealistic, unattainable expectations. And that's where we'll find kids who are high achievers committing suicide. We'll find kids who are very much high achievers dying by suicide because they just could never fulfill this ideal in their head. They can never fulfill it, and they feel like failures, even though they have lots of accolades, lots of achievements, right? So we have to make sure that we are bolstering our children with positive feedback. And then when they do something wrong, when they have a failure, when they have a setback, we are talking to them about how that's just part of life. And we tell them about our own setbacks. We tell them about our own instances of failure. And that will help them to be resilient and to be an honest critique of them, an honest person that critiques themselves in a healthy way. It's honest to, it's great to be able to critique yourself in a healthy way and not to tear yourself down, because a lot of times the worst critic that we could have in our lives is ourselves. A lot of times what holds ourselves back from our highest achievements is ourselves. We talk ourselves out of our high achievements. We talk ourselves out of our blessings and really fulfilling our destiny and walking in our purpose. And we want to help our kids to overcome that. And the way we help them overcome that is helping them know that they are human, that they make mistakes, that we are human, that we make mistakes, that this person over here is human, that they make mistakes, and it's okay, right? And it's going to be okay. And you still love them despite they didn't do perfectly and they didn't fulfill everything. And letting them know that over and over again and reminding them and pointing out that I made a mistake and I'm sorry about that or whatever will help them to also embrace themselves for who they are. Human people that are flawed, that make mistakes, and that are never going to be perfect, right? So do not set your child up for failure, because if they're holding themselves against a perfect measuring stick, they're never going to make that. And again, that's where we see those kids falling the hardest, because they've done all kinds of things right, but because it can't be perfect, they will, it's one of the saddest things that we've seen happen with kids who are high achieving, that they just can't be perfect and they die by suicide. And it's just a tragedy. Whew. So let's go back to the top 5 ways that we are setting our kids up for failure. We're not giving them consequences. We are doing everything for our kids. Number 2, doing everything for our kids. We are robbing them of their ability to become independent, self-sufficient, gain self-efficacy, right? The number 3 reason that we set up our children for failure, we lie to them. We don't tell them the truth. And so when the truth slaps them in the face because they're not used to hearing the truth, or they don't know what's real and what's not, right? So telling them the truth. Number 4, the way that we're setting our kids up for failure, overscheduling them and overstructuring their time so they don't have any downtime. They don't have any time to just be kids, to just have fun, just to have creative time, and, sets them up for being stressed out all the time and not being happy. And then the last reason, the worst way to set our kids up for failure is holding them accountable for being perfect and overemphasizing their achievement instead of letting them know that they're not perfect. They're never going to be perfect, and no one else around them is. And we love them, flaws and all, right? and some people say warts and all, right? And them giving them a chance to love themselves and, have a positive mental balance because they're not holding themselves up to perfection, but they're loving themselves for who they are. I so much appreciate you joining us on this Falling for Learning podcast. Like, subscribe, follow us, right? We are going to make sure that you know what to do to get your kids on track for learning and to stay on track for success. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week. Thanks again for supporting the Falling for Learning podcast. New episodes go live every Saturday at 5 p.m. You can watch us on youtube.com at Falling for Learning or listen on all major podcast platforms such as Apple, Google, Audible, Spotify, and much more. For more resources, visit fallinginlovewithlearning.com. We really appreciate you. Have a wonderful week.